Well, hello everyone, and good evening. Before we get started, though, I know everybody's ready to get started, and we're anxious to get this conversation started. Let's welcome Asali Devon Ecclesiastes. Asali is a mother, daughter, educator, organizer, author, event producer, performance artist, and community servant. She's the executive director of Efforts of Grace and the Ashe Cultural Arts Center, tonight's I Am New Orleans partner. Asali?
Good evening, everyone. I welcome you from Bobancha, the land in and around New Orleans, known as the place of many tongues. Originally inhabited by the Chitimacha Nation, and prior to 1718, serving as an important port, trading, and cultural hub for more than 40 diverse sovereign nations. We invite all in attendance to learn with us about the Native and Indigenous people, histories, and present day communities of Louisiana. And we're so grateful for you being here with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Asali. And once again, thank you to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. This is the very first discussion of 2022 in the I Am New Orleans conversation series. My name is Kelder Summers. I'm going to be your panel host today. I am the communications and engagement manager for the New Orleans Worker Center for Racial Justice, and I'm also a proud New Orleans small business owner. My overarching background is in broadcasting, having spent over 30 years of my life communicating with our community over the radio airwaves. My background also includes public relations, extensive sales and marketing, event management, copywriting, social and digital marketing strategy, and also donor engagement expertise. Some of my employers and clients have included the Starwood Corporation or the Sheraton Hotel, Clear Channel, Cumulus Media, Intercom or WWL, Reconcile New Orleans, Geico, the City of New Orleans, Essence Music Festival, Carnival Cruise Lines, McDonald's, a whole bunch of different organizations and companies. But today, I'm happy to serve as your moderator for this intergenerational community conversation about healing. Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation is the W.K. Kellogg Foundation's comprehensive national and community-based process to plan for and bring about transformational and sustainable change, and also to address the historic and contemporary effects of racism. Racial healing starts with an honest and open dialogue about equity and about how people experience our society differently. Only then is transformation possible. Our communities are still recovering from Hurricane Ida, and we're still navigating this pandemic and the countless socioeconomic disparities plaguing our city's Black and Brown populations. You've heard people say throughout the pandemic that they can't wait for things to get back to quote unquote normal. And well, frankly, normal was never good enough for many of us, especially here in New Orleans. So tonight we're going to address that and talk to both community elders and to community youth about how Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and LGBTQ leaders are envisioning and implementing initiatives and advocating for policies that create true opportunities in education and workforce so that we can eradicate prison and industry pipelines for our city's children. We'll touch on intergenerational approaches to economic justice that address and mitigate past harm while restoring infrastructure, quality of life services, and access to capital to harmed communities. We'll highlight the importance of both municipal support and community uplift of Black and Brown businesses as well. The range of health disparities designed by law that impact our communities, resulting in a 15 to 25-year difference in life expectancy between the city's majority Black and majority white neighborhoods, a difference that is expected to rise to 30 years post-pandemic. We'll also shine a light on environmental racism and how our fight for climate justice to save our land is intimately tied to our fight to save ourselves. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the I Am New Orleans initiative, it's a conversation series led by the community to inspire discussion and action around critical issues of racial equity that impact our children. This conversation was curated in partnership with the Ashe Cultural Arts Center. As we get started, I do have a few housekeeping items. Live Spanish and Vietnamese translations and closed captioning can be accessed at the bottom of your screen. Feel free also to use the chat box to add to the conversation and to ask our panelists questions. Throughout the conversation, you're going to see some polling questions pop up. This is another opportunity for you to join in and weigh in with your opinions. Today's conversation is also being recorded, so we can share that and additional resources with you afterwards. Most importantly, please join the conversation socially using the hashtag #IamNewOrleans. Remember, our goal is to stimulate conversation and action around critical issues of racial equity. So please get into your social media accounts and share your stories using the #IamNewOrleans hashtag. So now let's meet our panelists, and then we're going to share with you a short video that the W.K. Kellogg Foundation has created about the importance of taking a generational approach to change. Our first panelist is Kalamu Ya Salaam, New Orleans author and cultural anthropologist. Next, we have Gia Hamilton, who is the executive director and chief curator at the New Orleans African American Museum of Art, Culture, and History. We have Brideisha Harness Parker, who is the founder of the New Orleans Youth Coalition. And last but certainly not least, Morgan Walker, president and organizer of Morgan Walker Productions and Bike and Vote NOLA.
They long for their former state, begged to go back to the normal way. They wanted an old thing while in the midst of a new time, and I'm reminded of all the things that have become normal in a society where abnormality is king and black folks are pawns, pieces strategically positioned in places of harm. Normal is black schools receiving $23 billion less than white ones. Normal is extracted community wealth and disparaging health outcomes. Normal is the problem of framing black folk as the problem. Normal is white savior in chariots swinging low to fix black folk who are seen as the problem, when the real problem is who and what has defined what normal is. So no, we will not go with the norm. The usual does not suit us. Look, this is beyond reform. This is dismantling from the root on up, 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 up. Our eyes have always been on high, even when this system has continued to keep us low. From slavery to Jim Crow, now is still filled with plantation politics, eager to keep old ways alive, keep the chattel in line. Oh, they're an unruly bunch. Their lives, they don't equal to anything much, but how much is too much? Especially when the not enough is so familiar, when the devaluing of black life is a regular occurrence, when the hearts have disappeared and we only see hands holding institutions destined to fall on our heads. We are running for cover, stumbling through the rubble of racist policy and practice. So please, we rebuke the normal scene. We are beings worthy of every good thing, knowing there is nothing wrong with black people that ending racism can't solve.
Thank you so much for that. Wonderful. Wonderful. Speechless. Well, so now let's just kick things off, shall we? Tonight, we'll be challenging the idea of going back to quote unquote normal. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had many, many challenges, and yet somehow we kept hearing folks saying, I can't wait to go back to normal. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, do people really understand what going back to normal really means for our Black and Brown population? For example, according to the Urban League of Louisiana, before COVID-19, the unemployment rate in New Orleans for white residents was 5%. For Black residents, it was 15%. And according to the data center, despite the fact that 40% of all businesses in New Orleans are Black owned, they receive only 2% of all receipts. Receipts indicate the total sales, shipments, revenue, or business done by an establishment. This is not a zero-sum game. When our Black and Brown communities thrive, everyone does. In fact, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation released the Business Case for Racial Equity report for New Orleans in 2018. And it said that by 2050, the city stands to see a $43 billion gain in GDP, or the market value of finished goods and services manufactured here. If our workforces are upskilled and better educated as part of a collaborative effort to eliminate racial disparities in employment, health, education, and incarceration. It's mind-boggling. So how can we turn this around? As we think about our Black and Brown policy decision makers, what more can we do to support our Black and Brown businesses? Also, what can we do to combat unemployment at the local and state level? I'm gonna send this out to our panelists, and let's speak with Morgan Walker. Morgan?
Thank you guys. I'm so happy to be here, first of all, for you guys having me on this panel. But to answer your question, I think we all have to just get on a new normal type of, mindset. And I think that starts with entrepreneurship. I think our generation is really pushing that. We've always been entrepreneurs, and we try to reach out to the younger generation to support their ideas on also wanting to become entrepreneurs. So I think gaining our resources and putting some resources behind those ideas and showing them how to properly structure businesses to our youth, because I've been an entrepreneur. I started off selling clothing line, having a clothing line, and then going into event production. So though, one idea transpires to another. So I think by us, just encouraging entrepreneurship at a younger age and being able to support them with resources and funding, I think that's somewhere where we all can start to support Black and Brown businesses and make sure we continue to put our dollars into Black and Brown businesses that already exist,
Thank you for that. Kalamu, do you have anything to add to this? Unmute.
All right.
There we go.
Thank you. Capitalism will not save us. Capitalism is what brought us here. Capitalism is what keeps us here. Capitalism will not save us.
Thank you. I'll ask also for Brideisha to weigh in here as well.
There's a true disconnect with community funders and city leaders. Although I'm grateful for the limited resources and services we are providing for our youth and families across New Orleans right now, it's still not enough. So many organizations work with youth and families, but just like our 100% charter school city, not many of them include or implement services around trauma, mental health, conflict resolution, hurricane readiness, and preparedness. In 2020, NOYC discovered that 47% of grassroots organizations in New Orleans struggle to find and maintain funding. We need more economic opportunities, and we truly need folks to just tap in with folks like myself and my organization that's on the ground. Actually, I hate to use these two words, working with at-risk youth. It's no way in the world that I continue to get a large number of juveniles coming out the Youth Study Center, and I have to be left with the burden of trying to figure out how to provide those services they need with the very minimum funding I have, which is from my personal paychecks and asking people across the city to just donate $1. So we just need to do better by connecting all the dots and actually putting those resources in all communities across New Orleans, and hopefully have something like that become a model.
Actually, resources is a big issue. I'd like to move into that. As a matter of fact, there currently are some resources available out there, however limited, resources that assist families, prospective business owners, and just the citizenry in general. But what are some of the gaps in the services that we're experiencing, things that we see are missing that we might need to focus or shine a light on? What do we need that's not in the ecosystem? And Brideisha, since you kind of touched on that, we'll start with you, and then we'll pass this on to the rest of the panelists. Brideisha?
Right now, if you go to any district across New Orleans, excluding Lakeview, there's no real mental health or rehabilitation services for our youth and families that's affordable or free. Another thing, and this is no shade to no organization, the same group of organizations keep getting the same funding. Like, it's hard for organizations like mine and other organizations I know to apply for it. Like, I work in Central City. I've been working since I was 8 years old. I'm about to be 30 in April. Yup, refused to get a partnership with me. I can't even send kids up the streets because the program don't benefit the type of kids I work with. Every kid I've came in contact with needs some type of mental health or trauma-related services, not for just them, but for their families. In New Orleans, there's a huge disconnect because it's almost like if you're not grouped up with a certain group of people, you're not getting that funding. If you're not doing what the politicians want you to do, you're not getting them policies you know need to be passed. So again, we have to truly connect the dots, want to work together, and start putting that funding in new places. Cafe Reconcile, Liberty's Kitchen, yeah, a whole list of organizations. They've proven to show us what they can do. Now give us some funding so we can show y'all what we can do. I've been helping kids since I was 8 with nothing. Now give us some funding so we can show y'all that we can really get these kids out the hoods to be entrepreneurs, to be basketball or ball players like they want, to actually create an economic system for their families.
So what about some of the resources that we have? So we'll pull up TCA, Urban League, even Ashe. What are some of the challenge that we have to service delivery, for some of those types of organizations? Kalamu.
Yes. Well, the biggest problem I think we have is that the economic underpinnings of New Orleans are not tied in any way, shape, or form to the majority of Black people who live in this city. This is not unique to New Orleans, but this is also specifically what the situation is in New Orleans. By that, I mean, this is a city of old money, and the old money people control it and don't let nothing happen that they don't approve of. And we be, scrounging around for nickels and dollars. And meanwhile, for instance, the economy of New Orleans is tourism. Who owns the major tourism sector, the sector? Who owns the hotels? Who owns the airport? Airports are owned. They don't just happen, they're not just there. They recently moved the airport. When they moved the airport, who owns it? Why? How? How did...
Okay, he's got some connection issues. I'd like to pivot on that.
17.
Oh, there he is.
No, I just want to say New Orleans was built in 1718, right? And here we are in 2022, and we still don't own nothing in economic terms.
And that's a great pivot. I'd like to ask Gia to weigh in here, because we have a very important cultural economy here. And how are there resources available to help those culture bearers monetize and reap some of the benefits of that cultural economy? Gia.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with Baba Kalamu in the sense that reformation and dismantling are two completely different paths, and they require different strategies. And I'd say that, quite frankly, there's a need for both, right? I think that we're in an interim phase as human beings, as society, in which reforming things is the most palatable. And that has to do with the fact that most of us are just comfortable enough to not want or push for radicalized change or revolutionary change, right? Which is inherently violent, in however you want to define that. And so because we have just enough, folks are okay with continuing to have the same sort of conversations without sort of strategic planning around Black agendas that aggressively try to achieve the acquisition of resources, and resources being extremely broad. And so what I would say is, you know, for our cultural community, there are some choices that can be made on a regular basis. And that has to do specifically with what our culture bearers choose to participate in and what they choose not to participate in, right? And I think that those of us who are in institutional positions have the responsibility to make sure that our culture bearers creative community always know that there is in fact a choice, and that there's a reason why them not showing up to something or them not participating in something is also a really powerful and viable choice. So with that being said, the resources that I see continuously lie within the communities. I mean, that's something that, since I've been back at home, it's just continuous. People will, as the young woman said before, like, choose to take parts of their paycheck to fund, things that are meaningful to them for and by community. And unfortunately, institutions will come in on the back end, usually, and use extractive methods to then sort of siphon parts and pieces of the culture, interpret pieces of the culture, right, and present pieces of the culture. So institutions like Ashe, institutions like Junebug, like the New Orleans African American Museum are very important, because we actually act as the gatekeepers, which means we cannot use the same methodology that our white counterparts use, right? We have to make very clear statements about our core values, and then we have to demonstrate that in action, which means our budgets need to show and reflect how we're moving in the city. And I like to always tell people, the way that an organization or a company spends its money demonstrates what it values, right? And so if we're going to spend a certain amount of money paying people, then we have to do that consistently. It has to be equitable, and we have to make sure that all of our partnerships, right, reflect the value system that we have. So I'd say there are institutions that are doing this work. Unfortunately, by comparison, we are underfunded. So if we took, many of our budgets that are $500,000 to maybe $2 or $3 million, when you look at that compared to white institutions in particular, that's nothing. It is absolutely a drop in the bucket. I look at, in particular, not to pick on them, but the New Orleans Museum of Art, that can have anywhere from an $18 million budget compared to my $500,000 budget, right? And what I'm able to do, who I'm able to support and bring on. So some of this is about us having a larger understanding of the economic sort of background, and that I think funders can do really well. How do we make this information accessible? How do we make it relevant to many different community members so that we understand our own data, right, about us? And then how do we, both individuals and community members, along with institutions that can act as gatekeepers, along with politicians and other folks that are decision makers, policy makers, act together to create streamlined systems so that money and resources actually go directly to the people who need them the most, at rates and in by comparison that are equitable, right? And I dislike that word a lot because, you know, we love nonprofit language and lingo where we get on a bandwagon about a particular word. But for me, equity means that if we've had disparaging numbers for 300 years, it means that we need times 300% in order to get to where another group of a group or community is on an equal level, right? And so these are all about everyday decision making, and I feel like you know, we're the ones here that have to do that work on a daily basis, and it's helpful to know to have panels like this because we can better connect the work that we're doing and find ways to work together. And then, of course, the people who are viewing, right, can figure out how to connect into those systems so that we can do the type of reformation that makes everyone a bit more comfortable, that can help our mental health as we plan what the dismantling of these systems looks like, right? And I think that is a multi-leveled state of mind that we have to be in order to get there. We can't do that, you know, with people on their last leg in terms of health, in terms of economies, because all of these things are going to require resources.
Seriously, very great points. And you mentioned the gist of what you mentioned is collaborations. What collaborations exist as we look at these, you know, these holes? What collaborations exist that could address these issues and these quote unquote holes and these disparities? And how can others get involved with that? You know, how do we bring it all together?
I'll just share. I mean, I think many of us who are running businesses and organizations, Kelder, you know this as a business owner, right? Entrepreneurship requires 100%, 110% of effort, right, in order to be successful. That's the way in which a capitalist economy functions, right? Through competition. And unfortunately, we're not in a purist capitalist state. We really are in a debt capitalist state, which means that there are unfair competitions, right? That we as Black and Brown folks have to work harder than everyone else in order to get, you know, less than our counterparts, right? That's the reality. And so some of the gaps are that the funding does not reflect that particular issue, right? To me, you know, $100,000 over the course of, you know, a year is wonderful if it's unrestricted. And if I have it for multi-years so that I can create stability, being able to have more funding than is thought is needed, right? So we can't use the models that work for our counterparts. We can't say, oh, we gave $100,000 to this X organization that has a 25-year history and is financially stable. We can't give that to the vulnerable institution who's working in vulnerable communities, right, where people are constantly struggling, and think that the same things can happen and the same impact can happen, right? Something is going to suffer. Oftentimes, it is the health of the people within those nonprofit structures or those business structures, right? Because they're working 2 or 3 times as hard, and therefore they can't sustain the level of high quality programs that are relevant to our communities. So I think that's a huge gap. And that, you know, unrestricted funds, right? Double, triple, quadrupling the amount of money that is given to Black and Brown institutions is required. Being able to put endowments in place, being able to put escrows in place that have financial strategies centered around this idea that you can grow your money as you're using it and draw down and be able to invest some of that money is really important. And then I think the time issue, right? Time is the great equalizer. It is the thing that all of us have that none of us can get back. And so to me, even more than monetary resources, the wasting of time when we have to overly prove why we deserve certain resources, to me is a gross injustice. And so thinking about funders in particular who are looking at funding small businesses, there has to be an easier path for small businesses and for our nonprofits to get access to that funding. And so when it takes an absorbent amount of time effort and energy when our time is wasted. I think, as you said, where you're applying for things that you're never going to get, or you're not going to get for another 5 or 10 years, that is vital energy that could be spent in other places. And so this level of transparency around funding sources and how to get funding, and having the technical assistance that takes that off the back of the person doing the work, seems like it's essential, right? And so it's like we're basically taxing the people who need time the most, who are doing the most and having the best outcomes. We're asking them to do more, and we have to reverse that process. And funders need to really understand that that is an incredible burden, and that that is the opposite of the direction that we want to move to support organizations and community, quite frankly.
Morgan, would you like to weigh in here?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like a technical disconnect for me. And I mean by like just as easy as being able to pull up some type of app or looking on social media to find these grants for the nonprofits, for the smaller nonprofits, and also just the bigger nonprofits being open to collaborating and working with the smaller nonprofits. I think last year, starting my organization out of pocket, I understand how important collaboration is, because as I was doing the work and my work was getting more popular, then I would get the calls to collaborate. But a lot of people don't have that upfront capital to be able to go ahead and do the work on their own. And then, oh, on the back end, people coming in like, okay, I see what you're doing. You know, I see your numbers are proving this and this and this. Now I want to work with you. You know, they should see the put, you know, we should be able to present something to where like, hey, we want to do this, implement this, start this program, and that we should all kind of collaborate and talk about what resources are available. That's kind of what I'm learning throughout the process now, like talking to organizations with bigger budgets is like, you know, what do I need to present to show you guys, you know, that I deserve funding, at least to hire a small team to be able to continue to do the work that we need in the community. So I think just having those resources in front of our face, right? Because they put, you know, politicians, when you're running for something, you know, you see them all over. But when it comes to advertising, like resources for us, it's hidden. You never see them really talk about it. So it's like, y'all know a way to connect with influencers and people that's doing the work in the community, but I don't think they were really putting their effort into really telling us like what's available, you know. And they call us lazy because like, oh, y'all don't really look, you got to do your research. And, you know, I've heard that several times, and it's like, okay, you know, I'm doing the research, but also there's still things that you could have just literally put in front of my face, and we, you know, we can fill it out, or, you know, be able to apply for those type of resources. So I think that's, we have to find a better way to communicate with each other, because they're just not reaching us when it's time to help us. But when they need help from us, they know how to reach us, if you get what I'm saying.
And that kind of speaks to our next issue, which I do agree that, you know, we should be getting a little bit more of assistance from the top down, but the onus is on us, right? On small business owners, as you know, executive directors of small organizations, nonprofits. The onus is on us to learn as much as we possibly can about the processes, learn about what's out there. How can we empower ourselves to take more of an active role in getting this funding, or in even affecting the municipal decisions that impact our collective education, economic, and health outcomes? How can we empower ourselves and our fellow citizens to better prepare ourselves for these sorts of things? Baba Kalamu, I see you.
You see me? I see you.
I see you.
Let me say, first of all, Gia was headed down the right path, but it's very important that we understand something. I am not only the oldest person on this panel, I believe I'm the only person on this panel that has actually served on commissions by the National Endowment of the Arts. I went to DC, and when I went to DC and sat on those panels, I was there from the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, but I sat on panels that dealt with different things. And one of the issues I recognized was that there's tons of money, literally tons of money that are earmarked for this region. But when you go into the region, you don't see the tons of money. When you go on our streets, we make the music, they make the dough. We cook the food, right? But we're starving to death. You understand what I'm saying? We don't even recognize how much of our talent we have here that is used by others to support the majority community, quote unquote, majority community, the words that they use. But it's based on the backs of the minority of people. So we are considered a minority, even here in New Orleans. We are considered, when you go nationally, we are considered a minority. And the only way we're going to make change is not by asking for it, not by pleading for it, not by attempting to show how educated we are and we can fill out forms just like they fill out forms and so forth. We have to organize. We have to organize, and we have to demand change, and we have to make change. We have to be change agents. They're not 300 years of history since New Orleans was founded has shown us the slave masters are not in the business of helping slaves. The slave masters are not in the business of helping slaves. And to the degree that we don't understand that we're in the position of slaves, to that same degree, we will never get out, because we refuse to recognize what our larger reality is. And the young people sitting on this panel, they want to make change. They want to do something. But most of the older people are telling them, play by the rules. What you going to do? You're going to end up looking like the old people? You know, that's not what you want. If that's what you want, keep doing what you're doing. You understand what I'm saying? If you want a change, you got to make a change.
Thank you so much. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation today. And that moves us into the next aspect of this conversation. And the question, again, is how can we uplift and support Black and Brown businesses in the city of New Orleans? And this time we're going to consider how we can do that using an intergenerational approach. Brideisha?
So I think, just to piggyback on that last question, Kelder, first we have to become educated about the mission that we're on, trying to serve our people in each communities and across the city. And we also need to begin to understand that in a city like New Orleans, sometimes when you disagree with the individual group city official, it can result in you becoming disliked, which can sometimes be harder for you to get in a lot of those rooms or get access to those funding. We have a culture in New Orleans where, again, and I think I said this earlier, if you're not a part of a specific group or organization, it's just hard. Like, I have a proven track record of working with more than 2 generations of kids in New Orleans. But again, I have disagreed with a lot of systems and leaders and how they operate, which have caused me to be disliked and sometimes come off as a threat. So in order for, if people on here want to support and give back to Black businesses, what I don't see a lot in the community is we don't see our city leaders walking through the communities doing their own assessments with their teams. We don't see funders actually coming to New Orleans doing the assessments that they self with the organizations that's doing a lot of this work. Like, my biggest thing to funders and people who want to support people who are struggling in New Orleans around servicing youth and families, come see the work. Stop listening to what you hear. Come in the trenches. We have more than 6 projects in New Orleans. 2022, why do we even still have projects? People know if you live in the projects as a single African-American woman, you can't make more than 40K living in that project. So how you gonna create economic opportunity for your family? How many number of people we know have moved out the projects into a house they own or built? It's so, I'm not saying it's not hard everywhere else in the world, but it's super hard in New Orleans because we have kept up a culture of, if you're not in with the ends, you can't get what you need to service people. And that's why I just continue to try to save and provide for as many youth and families as possible, because I know what God got me on. Like, I'm on a mission for God. I'm not on a mission for the mayor. I'm not on a mission for the council. I'm not on a mission for the governor. I am here to service people. And the only way that I can do that at a sustainable rate is if I get the community and funders to say, well, hey, over the last 20 years, we saw that you did this. But what's heartbreaking for me is, with the minimum amount of resources and funding I'm having, I still lost 3 kids to gun violence last year. Like, I'm still losing kids, and I keep screaming at everybody across the center. When juveniles leave out the youth study center, where do you think they go? They go right back to the projects, the poverty-driven neighborhoods that they was in. They used to have this organization called the Welcoming Project that was getting our kids and was supposed to rehabilitate them, but they didn't. Nobody on this Zoom or this person, this thing can't tell me how many rehabilitation centers or centers in Orleans Parish or near New Orleans that are actually able to rehabilitate what y'all call juveniles and at-risk youth children. It shouldn't always be me getting these children. I don't care about the recognition. I don't care about the financial gain. I care about the results. And right now our results are good, but we still losing kids and families to gun violence and poverty. So my biggest thing is, if y'all want to invest, come holler at us. I don't have a lot of time to sit on a computer and put the language in the grants that y'all want me to sit in all that. I might lose a kid. I don't have enough time to do that when I got to take these kids to Disney World, or we got to go to a basketball tournament in Florida. I don't have a team or the capacity of the funding to do all that, but I ain't going to stop saving these children. So if people want to help Black and brown organizations or people that's really doing the work, y'all come through. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I can't tell you how many city officials and people in the community I run into that say, yeah, Brideisha, I see what you're doing on Instagram. I see what you're doing on Facebook. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, you see what you're doing? Can you volunteer? Can you donate $1? Can you mentor this kid? Shout out to Chris Womack. I went to this man. I said, hey, Chris, I'm really struggling with trying to mentor all of these boys by myself. Chris Womack has got one of my kids, 17-year-old dude who go to McMain. He started his carpentry job this weekend. He's been mentoring. Like, these are the results I'm looking for. I'm not looking to send my kid to YEP so they can get tutoring and after school program, and then they still can't go home and deal with trauma and their mama screaming at them. So if y'all want to invest, y'all come through. I'm everywhere. We everywhere. And that's my 2 cents on that, Kelder.
Thank you. And is there a way that we can get either a link or some way that folks can contact you to put their money where their mouth is? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
I'm about to put it in there right now. Thank you so much.
Put it in the chat. That's right. Gia, would you like to weigh in here? How can we uplift and support Black and brown businesses and organizations in our city using an intergenerational approach?
Well, I think that intergenerational approach is essential. I put in the chat, if we want different results, we have to do something different, right? And that means that our elders and our ancestors gave us clues about what we need to do now and what we need to do in the future, right? There's a connection between those things, and we cannot lose sight of that, which means that we cannot discount our elders' experiences. They are vital to helping us understand specifically our pitfalls, right? Like, they are in now a space of reflection about things that they could have, should have, would have done differently. And we need to be at the seat of those elders, listening and learning so that we understand what not to do, what does not work, right? So that we can vision together what might work and how we might want to move forward. And so I think these conversations are critical. I think on a kind of non-strategic level, there is something inherent about being a person of color sitting at the foot of someone who has come before you. We, are at a deficit in this world, in this society. And so there's some inherent understanding that, like, we need to understand what you know, that your stories, your experiences are valuable. Your mistakes are valuable to us. And so we have to recontextualize, again, the time that we spend with our elders, learning from them. And quite frankly, many of them, have things to share with us, and we have things to share with them. That exchange really is about us understanding as Brown and Black people on this planet that time does not exist the way in which we've been taught to believe it does, right? It is non-linear. So if we don't look at time as cyclical, if we don't look at time as this spiral, right, this ether, then we are in fact losing valuable moments with people who are going to help us progress and actually break through some of the challenges that we're having at this present generation. The second thing I'll say about that is, again, just speaking to time, we have to use our time wisely. So every single day that I wake up, I have to think about, what am I going to do? What are the things that I'm going to do that are going to push the needle forward? That might mean that the status quo, the sort of colonizer agenda of what I should be doing, right, I have to think about that critically and say, are there things that I need to do there that are just going to maintain what I'm doing? But what is going to push the agenda of the work that I'm doing? And that goes back to, and Bree, you said it beautifully, what is my personal mission? I've said really specifically, we all have to have a personal agenda. We all have a purpose on this planet. And I know what things I'm going to engage in. It has nothing to do with what title I hold. It has nothing to do with what institution I work for. I'm going to do the work that I'm doing, which is placekeeping work, building spaces, making sure that people understand economic development through real estate, right? Through land ownership, through acquisition of property, through culture, right? Through preservation and presentation of culture, and thinking and dreaming of spaces that are beyond this world that we know. That's what I do. And I'm going to do that regardless of where I am, who I'm with, right? And those are the people that I need to be in alignment with. And so I say, I can't do that work without my elders. So they're always at the tip of my tongue, because they have taught me things that are extremely valuable about my everyday decision making. And that's the other key, right? This is not just esoteric. This is about everyday decision making of who I say yes to, who I say no to, who we write a check for, who we choose to include, and who we say, not quite yet. And those are all ways that we as, Black business owners, Black entrepreneurs, and Black leaders in the community, and whatever role we actually play or whatever title we have to be thinking. And it's critical, because our elders are extremely vulnerable right now, especially because of COVID. And so, at the African American Museum, one of the things that we're going to be doing this year through a curatorial process is looking at Black Treme. There are 33 remaining families that are original families in historic Treme. Many of their stories have never been heard, right? And so we see that this neighborhood has shifted, right? It's not shifting, it has shifted. And so the African American Museum has to be a hub that prioritizes their stories, that says these are extremely valuable, and we're going to spend resources to make sure that you know that this place is here for you, that your stories are going to be at the forefront of our work, and that we are here essentially to make sure that we are the keepers of your stories, and that we are presenting them in ways that are respectful of the ways that you want to do that work, right? When we talk about collaboration, this idea, and this happens in the museum world a lot, where museums extract a collection, right? They take a piece out of its situational context, out of the community, right? And they reinterpret it. And that interpretation may or may not be accurate, may or not be relevant to the community that they took it from. Our approach to that work is that we want to help sustain institutional knowledge. So there may be institutions that are smaller than we are, house museums, right? And so how do those house museums live on our campus? That's what we have access to, property, right? And so that's the kind of work that we're doing with the Petite Jazz Museum, with Backstreet Cultural Museum. And we're saying, listen, we're not interested in acquiring your collection. We're interested in supporting your narrative the way that you want it to live in the world. And we're telling funders, listen, we get it. You've never heard of this model. That's because the other model is a colonizer model. And we are about decolonizing museum space. And we're about recontextualizing what museums and cultural institutions are supposed to do, which is supposed to inspire, right, new thoughts, new worlds. It's supposed to connect people so that we can think about what we want our world to be. And I can't think of people who are deserving of more space and time to imagine a world with them in it than Black people, right, in America. We deserve time and space to imagine what our futures look like. And so that, I think, is really key. And we can't imagine our futures if we do not review and take note of our past and actively work at honoring the people whose work we stand on. And so that is another critical part, I think, should be a critical part of every institution, to make sure that there's some elder council, elders who work to give context to those of us who were not there to be a part of these movements, right? And that we really sit at their feet. So I'm all about that. And as I think about my parents, I think about, on a personal level, that's something that I'm working to instill in my own children, right? You sit at the feet of your grandparents, your great aunts and uncles, and you are going to listen to them. You're going to learn from them. And you may not take it all in and understand it now, but those will be critical moments for you later on in your life. And I know that they have been for me.
Thanks so much, Gia. At this time, we're going to put a little poll up for you, and we're going to ask everyone to weigh in here, and we'll continue the conversation as the poll is put up there. And we're asking that everyone participate here in this poll. But as we continue this conversation, and we're going to wrap it up, I just wanted to get the weigh-in of Gia. I'm sorry, of Morgan. If you could weigh in real quick, how do you think we can uplift and support Black and Brown businesses in the city using an intergenerational approach?
Yeah, I think structure. And what I mean by that is, like, my personal mission, like, is to create structures, right? Because I feel like I was missing that. It was kind of like leading a blind thing. Even with the things that I'm doing, most times it's trial and error, right? So say, for instance, like right now, I wrote a book that will be coming out soon. I've written step by step, how much it costs. It only cost me $300 to write this book and publish this book. I take these people step by step to where I can hand it to someone and say, here, this is how you write a book. This is step by step, what it'll take, what it'll cost. And also I've done that with, biking boat. I've step by step, how do you, organize a biking boat? I can hand that off to everybody that's here if they wanted to do their own biking boat during election season. I've done that. I'm doing that with a new business that I'm creating. I think just creating those structures and actually, like, it being tangible to pass down to the next generation. I think that's one of my personal missions, like, because I didn't have that. Like, I didn't have anybody like around me who had something so successful and was able to tell me, like, more, you on the right path to go towards this, like a doctor or a lawyer. Like, they know what type of school process they have to go through. Like, I think we need to begin to, like, just document our journeys, and that's really what I've been doing, like, these last 2 years, just because I realized I was missing that. And I'm a child that grew up in New Orleans, middle class, and watched my parents have a business, be successful, and then lose it because they didn't graduate high school. They was trial and error too. So it's like, and then again, if I wanted to do that same business, they didn't have their structural plans written down. It was nothing for me to reference. So I think having that information for the kids to reference and be able to see, like, hey, I made that mistake. I did this, that didn't work. Maybe, that will help them along the steps that they're taking to their own personal journeys and making money with things that they want to do, towards their goals.
Thank you, Baba Kalama. We have like a minute if you'd like to weigh in here, and then we'll have one more question, and then we're going to get ready to move into our youth panel.
I just want to congratulate everybody who's on the panel and the younger people. As I said, I'm 74, but the younger people are making statements, and part of the statements they're making is they're asking for help to do the work that needs to be done. Many of us, we get to a certain age and we get tired. We get tired of working, we get tired of the personal struggles that each of us goes through, our personal relationships, our partners, our, when I say partners, our spouses and what have you. We all have problems with that. And in this society preys on us. When I say preys on us, I don't mean P-R-A-Y, I mean P-R-E-Y. They look for us and they have created these situations. And many of us sitting on these panels, we're presented as experts and what have you. You look at our home life situation, we are all struggling. We're all struggling. And I think the way for us to make it together is to get together. And the only way we can get together is to get to know people. So I thank you very much for putting this together. We'll get to know each other. And by, if we stick together, we can get something accomplished. If we don't, we're all going to suffer. Either we will struggle together or we will suffer individually. And right now, many of us are suffering individually, and it's hard. It is extremely hard. If you hear the people on this panel, they're telling you life is hard for us here in New Orleans. And unless and until we get together, it's gonna stay hard. It's been that way since they started New Orleans. They didn't do it to make us happy. They made us slaves. They brought us here to work for them and to create a city where they're happy with. You talk to white people all across this country. They love to come to New Orleans for the Mardi Gras. What do we do when they get here for Mardi Gras? We serve them and that's it. That's what we do. We serve tourists. It may sound hard. Kalamu, you being negative. Why don't you say something positive? I'm telling you the truth. We are the servants. And until the servants get together and form a different sort of coalition, we're gonna stay the servants. It's been that way for over 300 years and it'll continue this way until we get together. Thank you for all the people on this panel who have spoken up and spoken about the issues that have been raised. And I say the only way to stop the suffering, either we suffer together or we struggle and overcome this thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And actually that kind of segues into the final point that we wanted to address, and we may not have time to chat about it, but we definitely can leave you with some things that maybe you can think about and maybe bring to the table at our next discussion. But with everything that we've discussed this evening, one of the most important aspects is the overall health of our community. And Baba Kalamu just touched on this and how we are exposed. When people come to our city, we are exposed, right? And so the overall health of our community is very, very important. And we have been disproportionately impacted because of COVID-19. We've had to deal with hurricanes and natural disasters and all of these things. And we continue to fight for equity in these areas. Areas of maternal mortality, infant mortality, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, COVID. They've made all of these inequities even worse because our Black and Brown communities are less likely to have the support from healthcare, childcare, and from their jobs, their workplace, that allows us to work from home. So I want us all to think about those issues, take some of those issues with you. And if there is anything that you'd like to add, please add in the chat box. We're going to move forward, however, to our conversation surrounding equity, which is very important, especially for our young people. As we build a foundation for their future, we've got to remember that their success is our success. But we have to provide them, as Gia mentioned, with the tools and resources that they're going to need. We're going to hear from them next on what they've heard, their shared experiences, and what they need for success. So please welcome our youth panel moderator, Sharita Sims.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you all for that insightful panel. I am going to start introducing first myself and then our panelists, our youth panelists for this evening. As Ms. Summers said, my name is Sharita Sims. I am an author, curator, creative writing, workshop facilitator, and a doula. And our youth panelists are just as creative and successful. So first we have Akilah Toney. She's a published writer, poet, dancer, photographer, and youth advocate. And we have Anne-Marie Boseman, visual artist, majoring in computer science at Dillard University. Next, we have Carter Mayberry, mixed media artist focused on styling, creative direction, and digital content creation. And last but not least, we have Empress Wilson, writer, poet, dancer, artist, and activist. So during the first panel, we heard a lot about the challenging idea of going back to normal and that normal was never good enough. Oh, I'm sorry, everyone. Please forgive me. Before we get any further into this, we have a video to show you all. Let's pause for one moment.
What I want people to know about New Orleans is that we are the best city in the world. Our food, our culture, our art, our music, you know, it really is second to none. I mean, there's some great cities in the world, but who has a food named after them, right? Who has a whole cuisine? Who has a whole body of music named after them? And culture and genetics and, you know, all of those things. We've got all of that in this great gumbo that we call New Orleans.
New Orleans is really the soul of America. This city, like lots of other cities around the country, have good bones. But this particular city, one of the oldest cities in America, we were here before the country was here, valued our strength and our diversity, but we had fallen on hard times.
The W.K. Kellogg Foundation selected New Orleans as one of its priority places, and in 2008 made a generational commitment, which meant that it was going to concentrate grant making in New Orleans for at least 20 years. At the time when they made this commitment, it's 2008, 3 years after Hurricane Katrina, and the city was still very much in a recovery phase.
Katrina was the worst thing that could ever happen to us.
Yeah. Well put, yeah.
Yeah. It was the worst, best thing.
Yep.
Katrina got us very clear about really what New Orleans is for us, like who she is, what she means to us, and who really makes New Orleans, New Orleans. And now we're in this conversation about transformation. And that's only possible because of institutions like the Kellogg Foundation, who took the long view, that didn't just think about this as a 1-year investment or a 3-year investment, but really thinking about the impact that they could have over a generation.
I can remember in the early couple of years of Katrina, people saying, why is it taking so long? You know, I'm working 20 hours a day and somebody's asking me why it's taking so long. Because you just don't go rebuild all your hospitals, and you just don't go rebuild all your schools, and you don't go rebuild all your neighborhoods. It doesn't happen. It takes patience, it takes fortitude. And I think the Kellogg Foundation was able to both look at the forest and at the same point climb into the trees and support people and to guide people and to believe in people, right? That's hard.
I think part of what we have to offer to other cities is what we've learned, how we've matured about taking the long view and really stepping up to the systems change level, not just programmatic innovation.
The community has seen philanthropy change in that we're not just interested in the one-off project or, when it's not of interest to us anymore. We really have said, listen, we want to address some longstanding community issues. And in New Orleans, which I'm sure in many other cities, education, healthcare, workforce, those are longstanding issues that we didn't get here overnight. And so it's going to take some time. And I think philanthropy has said through its investments that we're willing to take the time and be here with you.
We can point to investments that we've made, and more importantly, the work of our partners that are delivering the work on the ground to see these changes happening. How do we institutionalize these efforts so that these changes are permanent and they're here for the long term?
I would also say one of the evolutions is when folks came in to help, they came in with an agenda. They came in with a notion of what outcomes they wanted to see. And I think what philanthropy has learned from New Orleans is you have to go at the pace of the people.
Many times as organizations, we spend a lot of time making decisions about people's lives and folk are not participating. And people are wondering why folk are not participating, but folk are saying, nobody ever took the time to ask me.
We learned that it doesn't matter what the foundation wants to do. If the community doesn't want it and it doesn't need it, it's not going to be successful. We can't do this work without the community and having them inform not just what the work should be, but how it should be done.
I think that has been critical, that the Kellogg Foundation has been willing to fund organizations of different sizes, shapes, and varieties to try to help create some connective tissue between organizations to get a full coverage of the landscape of people who are doing good works.
There are lots of stories of success, more than a few failures, but things that we learned from, and a constant story of people building relationships and networks with and across communities in a way that really allows us to see a better future.
The generational commitment of the Kellogg Foundation in the South has really been a game changer. Between our racial equity work and our place-based approach to the work, folks are taking note. Other foundations are taking note and becoming more and more interested in the way we're doing this work.
We have data that shows we are making incredible strides as a city. We have a booming entrepreneurial community. And then at the same time, we're seeing some really depressing statistics.
New Orleans is a city that is not short on inspiration. It has not always been long on aspiration for all of its citizens. A child-centered city is one where every child that's born in a city that is this fascinating will achieve their potential.
New Orleans, success is a New Orleans where everybody can feel proud of whatever the dream is that they hold for themselves and know that it is completely possible. And because that's true, that New Orleans is like one of the greatest cities in the world.
People have a strength to them in New Orleans. We deserve the best of everything, and we know that we're gonna get it. That's what I want people to know, that investing in the people of New Orleans is really one of the best investments that they can make.
If we can prove the things that work to build community in New Orleans, in Baton Rouge, in Louisiana, in Mississippi, we could prove it anywhere. What does it look like for us to not only show up for people who need us to show up, but to show up for the long term? Because there is no evidence that anything that took generations to create gets changed in anything less than a generation. That's the real opportunity.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Great. All right, welcome back. And thank you all again for joining us for part 2 of this evening's conversation with the talented youth of our city. So let's get right into it. So during the first panel, we heard a lot about the challenging idea of going back to normal and that normal was never good enough. Before the pandemic, youth were facing many challenges with regard to mental health, gun violence, and academic inequities. So to my panelists, what does going back to normal look like for you and your peers? And how has this pandemic impacted the New Orleans youth? And I would like to start with Akilah.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. For me, going back to normal means not going back to normal at all. I think as the adult panelists before were talking about and mentioning that this whole idea of trying to be adjacent to the normalcy that we had in the past wasn't really normal, you know. I think the pandemic exacerbated and exposed a lot of the issues that were going on in our city and sort of interrupted, I think, our ideals or our outlooks that we sort of retreated to in order to hide the actual issues that were going on. So for me personally, I don't think we should go back to normal. I don't think that we should retreat back into these ways we were hiding in. Because for me, going back to normal looks like, okay, what other ways we can diverge from addressing the social issues? That won't make them go away, you know? That won't make them disappear. You know, youth are still going to be out on the streets. You know, young people are still not going to have access to the resources that they have. So I think that although like this pandemic, there's been a lot of grief, a lot of loss. I think it exposed a lot of the social issues that we didn't touch on in the past. And unfortunately, but it did exacerbate the things that we have going on in our city. And now we can see them. Now we can't run away from them. We can't say, oh, let's go to Mardi Gras, let's not worry about it. Because it's right in our face. It's outside. It's on social media.
Yes, agreed. Thank you for your response. Carter, would you like to weigh in on that as well?
Hope everybody can hear me, but I just want to say that I agree with what Akilah is saying about, you know, everything being in our faces now, because we can see how after the pandemic, we see how mental health is serious, and we can see how much it's affected a lot of youth in our city. We can also see that it's not something like to be taken lightly, because I feel like before, when everyone was able to, you know, do these activities to avoid having to worry about the serious issues, it just wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been. And now I feel like it's plain to see that it's an issue that we all deal with and that should be taken care of and should be taken more seriously and not, I guess you could say, ignored, or, you know, just people not really caring about as much as it should be cared about.
Yes. We can see now, and this event, this conversation is a huge part of the fact that we can, and that we are moving towards change. Empress, would you like to weigh in as well?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Really happy to be here. I 100% agree with what Akilah and Carter were saying. I honestly feel like that there isn't really a going back to normal, because us going back to normal, like Akilah said, it's us closing our eyes to what we've opened up to now. It's us erasing all that we've spoken. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry. Us going back to normal means that we turn our backs on things we should have really spoken up more before. And I feel like the pandemic has also given us the chance to really think about what we have been, what's been out there social media wise and what's being brought to our attention, and standing up for it, and just refusing to be comfortable with what we demand more now. And I feel like that's something we should not back away from. I feel like now we've been in this thing for so long. We have no choice but to keep moving and keep moving forward, because, you know, that's just the way you move in life in general. You know, we're already here now. We can't go back now. Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep building each other up. Let's keep what's the word? Let's keep making waves. Let's not keep things comfortable just so everyone else can be happy.
Yes, ma'am. And speaking of moving forward, I want to direct this next part of this question to Anne-Marie. What do you see as our greatest opportunities in moving forward?
Forward, elaborate on the question.
Oh, yes. Okay. So we were just talking about, well, the first part of the panel was talking about going back to normal, the normal pre-pandemic normal. And your peers were mentioning that they don't feel that we can or we need to. And Empress finished off her statement talking about moving forward. And so I just want to know, what do you see as our greatest opportunities in moving forward? How can we do that with what we have?
Well, opportunities that I see, at least now we can at least learn from, like, I'm not gonna say mistakes, not that mistakes were made on like any youth part, but like we know we can recognize patterns of maybe like trying, like we might be able to like recognize trying to be silenced or like trying to be placated. We also know like what maybe did or did not work moving forward and what has worked. So we just have better hindsight on what can and won't work.
Yes, agreed. And Carter, would you like to weigh in on that question again?
As far as opportunities moving, I feel my AirPod died. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So opportunities moving forward, I feel like there are opportunities to be created, I guess you could say, because there aren't. Can y'all hear me still?
Yeah, a little bit. Can you say one more thing just to make sure?
My computer. All right. So I was saying, I feel like opportunities moving forward, I feel like there are opportunities to be made. Just because of like how we were saying, it's apparent that, you know, there are issues and problems with the youth here in New Orleans. And I feel like now that it's for people to see, and that is something that everyone realizes now, that there are things that can be done about it and they will start to be done. So that's why I say opportunities will come, because I don't see them yet. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't see the opportunities yet to help us, I guess you could say, but I am hopeful that there will be some in the very near future.
Right. Okay. That's keep hope alive. Akilah,
yeah, just going back to like the last question and tied it in what we're talking about now with opportunities moving forward. It's just like something that's really been on my mind. It's like seeing the past news about everything's about young people, the New Orleans youth this, juveniles this. I think for me I would say for myself, I've been seeing more young people in the news for crimes and for things that aren't so good for our city. And I've been seeing that since around 2019 when I was in high school and I'm in college. But one thing that does worry me with these like emergence of opportunities is like sort of blaming it on youth. Like that's what I've been seeing, like, oh, it's young people doing this. It's the young people of the city causing this, like bringing us to like how young people in New Orleans have an inherent criminality. Like young people in New Orleans East have an inherent criminality, like something is just wrong with us, you know, or like when are the young people gonna do this? Like diverging it to the people, you know, instead of institutions and systems, like there's been a lot of carjackings, right? Why do people carjack? You know? And why do we call it carjacking, and it's not joyriding? Because they lack resources in somewhere. People steal because they don't have what they're stealing. And so I think for me, what does worry me is that we're going to be moving towards something more individualistic. We're looking at these opportunities about, oh, youth have to go out and get this, or youth have to go out and get that. It's something that has really been worrying with me. And, with the DA and the police union and all these institutional organizations and authority figures, sort of, it's like saying that it's something inherent within us as to why carjackings are happening, while we're being exposed to gun violence and all of these different issues. So that's my caution with worrying about these different issues and looking for opportunities, because it's like when the water off in your house, do you blame the sink? No, you go to the well. You call Surgeon Water Boy and say what's going on, right? So I think to a certain point we got to stop trying to turn on the sink and start looking at the well. And I bring that up because just like growing up, I've seen even my own people, family members, Black people in New Orleans, older generations just talking down on younger generations about the things that are happening now within our city. So a big part of that, if we want these opportunities to emerge and last, we have to rethink how we incorporate youth voices, because a lot of these opportunities that might emerge within the city, specifically, I'm interested in more art opportunities for Black youth. My thing is, are we gonna ask the young people what they want? You know what I'm saying? And that's my thing. Actually incorporating youth voices and youth leadership, and not only looking at youth for publicity, to take a picture, to be on a panel, to speak up. What does it look like beyond the panel, beyond the photo, for young people to get the opportunities that we want and need? If it's always about gun violence and this and that, there are so many talented young people in New Orleans who don't have access to music studios, or access to visual art supplies, access to writing materials because of what they want to do, And I was blessed to grow up in organizations and have family members that encourage that artistic nature of me. But what about the other young people? What about my neighbors next door who didn't have, that ride to that after school program, who didn't have that ride to this one organization, So for me, it's rethinking and shifting how we support you and actually incorporate their voices, because so many opportunities could come, opportunity, but really y'all know this, analyzing the way institutions and systems really look at young people and how they criminalize us firsthand.
Yes, yes. Y'all are giving so many powerful words and insight. We really appreciate y'all. So, and what you're saying goes directly into the next question. New Orleans youth have so much on their shoulders and experience so many traumas before just the age of 18. So whether it's dealing with devastating academic impacts of the pandemic, or rebuilding after hurricanes, losing friends and families to gun violence or poverty, it's just so much to deal with. So how can we better support mental health for our youth? Let's discuss that. And I want to start with Anne-Marie.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Just the question part, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. How can we better support mental health needs for our youth?
Well, I'd like to start by saying, I know that mental health is really stigmatized amongst Black and Brown communities. Even suggesting going to therapy, it's suggesting that something's wrong with that person, or that, therapy is for quote unquote crazy people and stuff like that. So I think one step that could be taken is destigmatizing therapy and changing the way we discuss it, especially for our youth, because it's really necessary. I don't want to say necessary, but it's really helpful for young people to move forward and deal with these traumas that they have to experience, that they've been forced to experience. Yeah. So.
I'm sorry. Yes, we hear you. Thank you. Empress, would you like to weigh in as well?
I can definitely say that, I'm sorry, repeat the question one more time so that I know what I'm saying hits right.
How can we better support the mental health needs of our youth?
The mental health needs of our youth. Okay, I can definitely say that because I'm a person that struggles with mental health because it's hereditary on both sides of my family. I can definitely say that providing a listening ear and just showing that person that is dealing with mental health that you are aware and that you're not here to pass judgment, you are here to help. I feel like, just as Anne Marie said, mental health in the Black and Brown community is not really touched on that much as it would need to be, because there are a lot of Black, not even Black youth, Black people in general, Black adults, Black adolescents, Black children that deal with mental issues. But because it's not a subject that is not really, what's the word I'm looking for? Because it's not a subject that's really talked about much, it can provide, it causes a lot of stress because it's the feeling of being misheard, not misheard and misunderstood. So I definitely feel like if we definitely take the time to really, and just check up on the youth, ask them how they're doing, ask them how they're feeling, like what made them. My mother would always ask me, what made you smile today, what made you angry today, just so she can know how my day was going and how I'm feeling. I definitely feel like if we show the initiative that we care about the youth, and like Akilah said, we're not here to just, well, what the young people doing, why aren't the young people are doing this, we're actually making sure that we take care of the young people, because eventually these young people will be the new leaders of the world, and it'll be up to us to make sure that we're leading the right path and that we are being leaders as well to the people coming up behind us. So I definitely feel like that in general. And it does really make a big difference whenever you do show initiative, that you are present and that you are aware and that you are listening.
Yes, and I have faith that people are listening more. Carter, as the male panelist, I would like for you to speak specifically about mental health from a young man's perspective.
All right, so as a man, as a Black man, young Black man, I do feel that mental health isn't really a priority when it comes to us, because a lot of times we're told to, be a man, or like the cliche, and it's like, oh, boys don't cry, stuff like that. So it's like, I don't know, I just feel like a change could start with people allowing us to identify our feelings and speak about them and not be belittled or made fun of or have to feel ashamed about expressing your feelings. I was kind of fortunate enough to grow up with a lot of women or girls like around me. I have all sisters. A lot of my cousins are girls, so I was always able to identify my emotions. And I know a lot of men that can't do that, but I feel like I wasn't really always able to express them, because it was like, oh, now you're a man, you can't cry, you can't be sad. Oh, you're hurt, suck it up, it's okay, you'll be fine. But it's like, no, that's not right, because that does a lot more damage than people give credit for, like think it does. And it's not ideal to have to, grow up that way, because now as I'm getting older, I'm feeling these feelings, and it's like, I don't really know how to take care of them, how to handle them, how to grow from it. So I feel like a change could start with just allowing men to feel and allowing us to be expressive and to, just be taken care of sometimes. Because, yeah, that's how I feel. There's just a lot of pressure on us to not like, be so quote unquote emotional, but it's normal. Emotions are normal. It's normal to feel, but it's not really doesn't feel that way, and I just don't think that's right. So a change could start with us, allowing Black men and men in general to be sad, to cry, to need a hug sometimes, stuff like that.
Yes, thank you so much for being vulnerable in that and sharing your perspective. So we have discussed so many heavy topics this evening, and we also have an opportunity to heal and to bring community together. And as future leaders of this great city, how can we empower our youth and bring our community together? And what does an equitable future look like to you all? Akilah, I'll let you start.
For me, one of the things that I've seen that was mentioned in the last panel was talking about like the strength of New Orleans, like talking about our cultural barriers, like our cultural longevity. It's something that I think that should be preserved through the young people. So for me, it looks like, I'm an artist, I'm always jump for the arts. And I know everybody is not, might not be an artist but I definitely think exposing young people to well-rounded avenues of not even just jobs, but looking beyond labor for youth. Because I think we need to, when talking to young people, decenter our access to labor and how much labor we could do, decentering that from liberation and things that'll get us free or things that'll help you stay out of trouble. Labor is not always the way. So I definitely think decentering from that, but moving into approach of, okay, they have young people interested in basketball and STEM, and that's great and that's beautiful, providing resources for that, but also making sure that they might not be getting in our New Orleans public school systems from those teachers, but giving packets, books, resources, school supplies to families at home to begin that learning process of Black children, specifically Black children, learning about themselves, learning about the James Baldwins, the Nikki Giovannis, the Nina Simones, learning about the R.G. Lords, like giving young people something to look up to, and I'm not just saying that because for me, like when I was 10 years old and I had a Black teacher who took the initiative to stray away from the usual Louisiana curriculum. And, she taught us about James Baldwin when we was in 5th grade. She taught us about W.B. Du Bois and showed us Nikki Giovanni poems and let us watch Black dancers on TV, showed us Elvin Ailey, Lauryn Hill, showing us Black creatives, showing us Black artists at a very young age and exposing us to that. And I think there's so much to say, like, we need to see ourselves. And I think that's so true and that holds weight, but, see ourselves in ways that don't align with capitalism and individualism and the things that are adjacent, to our oppressors. Definitely seeing young Black people, on the screen, giving us books and resources. Like that's the number one thing for me, is giving young people something, to open up to something to paint on. And I think it really does start there. And I feel like I was a product of that, like being shown, certain books and television shows and at a young age. I went to after school programs where I was able to have some time to not be at home, not be at school, but be in between. Now I ain't gonna say it didn't have its issues. That's something definitely that was mentioned and critiqued about these organizations in the city. But I did have a place where I could start with that. I did have those Black people within those programs who were able to push us forward. I remember Brideisha talking, like people like Brideisha, like when I was 10 years old, who were willing to take that initiative and step up for young Black kids. And it's hard because I saw, those Black people in those organizations stressed out. But for me personally, it's like they were the ones who helped me keep going after experiencing the racism from white organizational leaders, experiencing, the classism from different organizational leaders. It was Black people closer to my age, Black artists who were pushing me toward that. And that was something that really pushed me. And I think, obviously helps with mental health and these different things. And I think that could be a model for Black youth across the city, getting us interested in the arts, letting us learn about our own New Orleans history, and passing the torch, allowing us to be the culture barriers, training us to be the cultural barriers. So definitely decentering our opportunities from capitalism and adjacency to wealth, white wealth. So.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Anne Marie, would you like to weigh in as well?
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
Yes. So how can we empower our youth and bring community together? And also, answer.
Like Akilah was saying, arts are definitely a way to empower the youth. And again, like also who she was saying, speaking to the youth, actually not just being like they need this or they need that, because that leaves young people feeling unheard. And it's like, or especially in a city like New Orleans, like where they might really know what they need. But ways that we can empower them are really like talking to them, helping them, like talking to the youth, reaching out to them, giving them opportunities to like give like examples of things they want or need access to, or ways they can express themselves, ways they can help themselves like for their future and stuff like that. And again, I know she was talking about how like straying away from like just putting them into labor, like just putting them into labor, but like something that a lot of young Black people don't necessarily have access to, are like knowledge about like financial education, and knowledge about like saving, budgeting, knowledge about like going to school, or like what you're gonna do outside of school, like when you graduate and stuff like that. So really like giving resources for stuff like that, as well as giving creative opportunities and just personal outlets. I think those are really good ways to empower the youth. This is specific, like, financial stuff would be more towards like high school, especially because a lot of people are raised to think that they do have to go to college, or that you have to like immediately like go into like the conventional 9-to-5 workforce, when you really don't. And a lot of young people really don't realize what options they have. And I don't have a lot of experience within New Orleans. I just moved back here from not being here for 5 years, but definitely from being like in rural Louisiana and like being around like other Black youth across the state, they really do think that their only options are like trade or you go to college. Like they really don't know what options they have. So just exposing young people to other things, including in New Orleans, because you would think that in New Orleans, since it's really one of the only big cities in the state, it's like that in Baton Rouge. You would think that people are really like open to things, but not really. If they don't have the access to those resources, people really don't know what they can have, what they can do. So, yeah.
Yes, most certainly. Thank you so much, Empress.
I really like this question actually, because me personally, I'm all about learning. I'm a person that loves to learn. And especially when, I'm sorry, I felt a burp coming on. Especially I love to learn about how there's still a lot of history, a lot of Black history that has not been shown to the light yet. And I find that, kind of unfair, but also it's a little amazing because it provides you to learn. And I feel like if the young people realize that there are tons of Black people that have made huge contributions to America as a whole, including improving certain things that white people created in the first place, but because of the help of our Black people, they became very big, very popular. I just feel like if young people, in order to get young people to start, coming out and just standing together to show that they don't have to take this. They don't have to be forced as just the young people that are just told to just sit down and listen. They can be the young people that that can demand for a better change, especially Black young people. Like Anne-Marie said, in high school as well, definitely high school. Because high school, I definitely feel like high school is that moment in like a teenager's life, because they're figuring out what they want to do when they get older and they're learning the ropes on how to move through life. But I feel like there's so much that they can stand up for themselves. So I definitely feel like if we show them that there's a whole world out there that we can uncover, all we have to do is just, you know, hold each other tight and not be afraid to be, not like Akilah said, not be afraid to be of being uncomfortable. And like, I want to be comfortable, and I want to be more than what I am put in a box in. Because I feel like that's definitely what teenage life is, especially in high school. I feel like it's kind of a box. It's a box of figuring stuff out and wondering what to do. And meanwhile, at the same time, you're kind of being told to just be a young person and just figure that out. But me personally growing up, it was my mother for me. I watched my mom do work with so many Black artists here in New Orleans especially. A lot of people don't understand that there are a lot of young people in New Orleans that are like that are underground, that are trying really hard to break out of that. A lot of artistic young people. Oh yeah. So my mother, she was the one that really introduced me. That's how I met Miss Sunny Patterson and Baba Wood. I met them because I would always come with her, and I would just see just nothing but amazing Black people in one room putting on performances and panels and what's another one? Exhibits, showcases, rehearsals, poetry slams, just everything. And I feel like if we show them that, then they would definitely want to run towards it, because nobody wants to run towards anything that's looking like it's that's not glamorous. And not saying that it has to be glamorous, but we can show them the glamorous side, because I feel like the history of our people just has been it's just one small part. And of course, that's slavery and segregation. And while that's important, that's very important, we should talk about that. But don't just only talk about that. I didn't have a teacher when I was small that was showing me Nina Simone and James Baldwin and all of them. I didn't have that. It wasn't until it was actually outside of school where I saw all this stuff for myself, because I had nothing but artistic people in my circle, but not a lot of people do. So I feel like we should introduce the youth to more of that artistic side of our Black people, that we can be anything we want to be. And it's not about being strong or being determined. It's all about having that passion and running with it. And that's for man, woman, girl, boy, because it all starts with the youth. They're the ones that have that, when I grow up, I want to be this. But as they go through life, so many things are getting hit at them. Some of them slowly start to lose it. And I feel like we should, I'm sorry about that. I feel like we should, continue to let them know that, the world is their oyster, and that, we should really, especially with the Black youth, just show them what they're meant to be, if they continue to follow their dreams and their passions and just not afraid.
Yes, truly. Thank you so much, Empress. Y'all are speaking tonight. We have to wrap up. This is the end of our conversation, but I want to know if you all have any final thoughts, our panelists. Carter, I know you didn't get to go, but do you have anything that you would like to add briefly?
Briefly, I'd just like to say that in Equitable New Orleans, for me, it will be just having people be more accepting of creatives, because I know New Orleans culture is what it is. And as a creative, a lot of times doing something different, it'll have you be kind of frowned upon, or people won't really support you the way that you're looking for. So I just say being more accepting of young creatives in the city and allowing us to create freely and express ourselves with our art and not have it look like anyone else's and it be okay. Briefly, that's what I like to add to that.
Definitely agreeing with Empress and like talking about the arts, but I think that's just one example of how to activate young people in New Orleans. It's just for me personally, even because I have a nephew and I always try to, push him like, please be an artist, you want to be an artist, but trying to just make sure he has access to all the different ways that he can be, beyond sports, beyond the usual things, and for me right now, what's sitting on my heart definitely is, again, like decentering the idea that youth labor, that young people, in certain places will get us access to liberation, decentering capitalism and this idea of having access to wealth, although it helps, it won't get us fully free, like Baba Kalamu was saying earlier, capitalism will not get us free. And I think that's something definitely to instill in the youth, teaching us that, capitalism, that, monetary value is not always the way for us to come together and unite. There are other ways beyond, wealth that we can come together as a community. And I definitely think the arts shows that. And it was said in the chat that like NOAM has like, free museum viewings. I think that's like an amazing opportunity for young people to get active in. But I also like know personally that a lot of young people might not know about NOAM. What are the ways that we can increase youth digital engagement? What are the ways we can activate youth in low income communities? Young people who live in the East. I live in the East. I swear I did not know about NOAM until I would say like 2020, like when I started getting familiar with it and like telling other young people about it. And even like with some organizations, like a lot of young people just don't know, like, oh, I didn't know they had that. I didn't know they had that. So definitely finding ways to increase youth engagement. Like young people, we be on social media, So definitely one of the ways to activate us, and also cross collaborating and not so much dependent on, people at the top always, but definitely like, I don't know, I was saying like Brideisha, getting the young people from there, like having biking opportunities with that, collaborating with NOAM, like all these different cross collaborations that I think make New Orleans, young people coming together, older people coming together. This intergenerational collaboration is something that I think definitely can, should, and is, with the people I've seen on here, involved in the cultivation of the different organizations that are present here and the different institutions that are present here, like having that same, foundation for us and coming together. So yeah, I'm going on a tangent, but definitely bringing the arts to young people.
I just wanted to briefly say what Carter said about there being a lot of pressure on Black men on how they should be. I feel like there's a lot of Black pressure and stereotypes that are put on to Black people that just doesn't allow us to be human and breathe. And I feel like, we should keep reminding ourselves at the end of the day, we are human beings. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to need a friend to talk to you. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to feel upset. It's okay to feel happy. Like specifically as a Black woman, there's just so much. You have to be strong. You have to be independent. You have to know how to stand on your own 2 feet. And, I feel like that kind of stuff like that kind of pressure and that constantly being told, because it is true. But at the end of the day, life happens and it's okay to just be a human being. Because nobody wants to be seen as, as a weak person, which is understandable. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have beating hearts and we all have our bodies, souls, and minds to protect. So I feel like it's very important that we tell each other and ourselves, especially, that no matter what the world puts pressure on us for or puts pressures on us about, we're still human beings and we're still vessels and we're still celestial beings on this earth. And, you know, I just want us to be able to, I just want us to know that it's all, you know, it's okay. And that's for any age, no matter what age you are.
Yes, to be able to show up as our full selves, our whole selves. Yes, yes. Thank y'all so much. Y'all really speaking. I'm so appreciative that y'all were the panelists and you got to share so much wisdom. They are going crazy in the chat right now. Like, y'all are loved, and you're probably going to get so many, you know, people coming to you after this, like trying to get you to do work with them. So thank y'all so much, truly. Thank you to our wonderful audience and everyone involved in making this evening's event such a valuable and thoughtful experience. Thank you to the participants for your insight and the panelists for joining. We plan to take some of the themes we heard tonight and further explore these issues throughout the year during I Am New Orleans conversations. So we hope to have you all continue to join us. And we want to hear your stories. So please add to the conversation socially using the hashtag I Am New Orleans. And remember to visit the website, IamNewOrleansVoices.com. Thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.